Michael, it's great to have you on today. Thanks so much for making time. I know you're now in about the third month, maybe, as the new CEO of isolved, and really appreciate you making time to chat with us about what brought you over, what you're excited about, what you guys have already built, and what's still to come. So, just to get things going, I'd love it if maybe just a brief introduction to yourself, and just kind of tell us maybe what got you over into the seat at isolved and made that such an attractive opportunity for you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Excited to have the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Yeah, a little bit of a background on me, as brief as I can make it. About 30 years in human capital management. Started off like many people at ADP, which is where I fell in love with our space. About 5 years there, and then moved on to Paychex. Very fortunate to have been part of starting their major markets division. Took that from 10 million to 400 million in revenue. Then became the head of marketing and business development for the whole organization for a number of years. I actually then moved over to Paylocity, where I spent 15 years. I joined the founder, Steve Sarowitz, when it was 15 million in revenue. We took that to a billion in revenue. I was the CRO for a decade and the chief operating officer for 5 years. Took the company public. It was an amazing ride. And that actually was the end at the time of my HCM career. I then pivoted off into pure play AI, a wonderful little company called Krista AI, right at the center of artificial intelligence, a system of orchestrating AI and building agents. Got to work with hundreds of organizations on their AI strategy, both in terms of leveraging AI internally and from a productization perspective. That's where I really came to appreciate, how you make AI successful, what can cost you failures with that. So tremendous. So as far as isolved, I'd wrapped up at Krista and honestly wasn't sure if I was going to go back to full-time work, but I had told the recruiters, feel free to bring me interesting opportunities, but nothing in the HCM space. I finally got out. I'm not going back. And after a few months of not seeing anything interesting, one of the recruiters contacted me and said, "Hey, I've got something in the HCM space. I know you're not interested, but please sign the NDA. Let me tell you who it is. And honestly, if you're not interested, I'll leave you alone." So I did. And of course it was isolved. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to have to seriously consider coming back to HCM. And here's why. I was looking at the opportunities they were bringing me strictly through the AI lens, right? Would AI disrupt this industry and this business, or could it be a real catalyst for growth and expansion? And having looked at the small players in the space, I was quite concerned for the little folks. I do worry that it's going to be very difficult to keep up with the investment and the pace of AI, and that there's risk there. So I wasn't too game on going to work for a little player. On the big side, there's a lot of big players in the space, lots of resources to pour into it. But, from my opinion, looking at the playbooks wasn't the way I'd go about AI, and they were pretty far down the path already in their AI strategies, as they should be. isolved was really unique. For me, I was like $600 million business, really profitable, plenty to be able to invest in AI, but also pretty virgin AI strategy. And I had developed a playbook in my mind. What would I do if I came back to AI? And when I overlaid that playbook, I found it to be something that would be tremendously accretive to the business and really accelerate it. So after I got past AI, quite frankly, I looked at the rest of the business and was just so impressed. Unbelievable service, which I think is an important moat in today's day and age. A great technology platform with really the only major need being it's time for a UI UX refresh. And for me, that's great because we can do it with AI first in mind and make the conversational experience completely seamless with the mouse and the keyboard experience, and be really differentiated from that perspective. So I really felt like those were all of the elements needed to do something really special in the HCM space. And that's why I decided to come back in after a few years away.
Yeah, well, thanks for laying all that out. And I think you've already sparked some good branches for us to go down. But I think the thing that jumped out most to me was saying that, the fact that maybe they hadn't broke ground on their AI strategy quite yet gave you the opportunity to come in and design it the way you wanted to. So when you were at Krista, you're working with businesses on transformation. What were some of the things that you learned that you took away from that experience that you think maybe, again, some of these HCM players that have already set course are not necessarily recognizing?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I came to really appreciate that AI is not a side hustle. It is a full-time job and a domain of expertise. I think we will all come to realize that, you wouldn't build your own AI any more than you'd build your own payroll system or your own CRM, right? I mean, these become staple solutions. And so these frontier models are incredibly advanced. They spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on it, and it's moving and changing so quickly. So, I think that's one thing that I came to really appreciate is that the partnership approach is a really critical, and trying to go out on your own when it's not your full-time area of expertise. Beyond that, what I would tell you is that I think there's different levels of AI, and I'm sure we'll talk about it today, but some of these Gen 1 and Gen 2 approaches, they're interesting, where you help people do work, but the real unlock comes when you can get AI to own outcomes, and then the people start helping the AI. And that's what I'm pretty focused on. Is there's plenty of room and opportunity, and also, a lot of companies that have already laid the pathway for AI that helps people do work, which I love. But now it's time to really see the ROI and the potential of the AI by creating this generation 3 solution where these autonomous agents really own the business outcomes that they've been tasked to work on.
So when you think about like this kind of highest level outcome of AI within HCM, maybe this is something that I need like a bias or a correction, but is this something that you can do with an infrastructure and a platform that's been in the market for decades? Or is this something that you need to start from zero and AI native and kind of rip everything out and start over from square one?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, right? So, I think that you absolutely can do it with legacy solutions, but of course, the key is going to be making sure that you can open up that data, right? You got to get the APIs to an MCP place, right? Because it's really going to be the access to that rich data set that's going to make the AI capable of doing so much of what we want it to be able to do. Garbage in is still garbage out. AI without data, without training, not useful whatsoever. So you do have to do that. So the AI native players, of course, can probably get there quicker than some of the legacy players can, but then they lack the data and the history and that richness. On the other side of it, vendors that have that history, that richness, that data, they may have some of that data trapped in the silos that need to be broken apart. And that's a focus. So both companies coming from both AI native to, let's call, legacy, have work to do, and probably will meet in the middle because they're probably equally, task oriented things that have to be done. But yeah, the ability to get at the data is the key. And I think all of us have the ability to build what we need to in order to get there.
And what happens to, I guess, like the existing deterministic software functionality? Let's use an example of I don't know, like the simplest would be like generating a job description for an applicant tracking system. Like that is a screen and a table today that a human goes into. If that is something that's done in a chat window, like do you turn off those features? Do they just live in the background? Like, do you kind of have like the AI infrastructure over here, but you also have the software infrastructure behind it? Like, how does that all come together?
Yeah. I think that's what we're all, tasked with envisioning, right? Is what is the right blend of the conversational interface with the classic keyboard and mouse interface? And they both have their place. There's things that shouldn't be done in a conversation that would be much harder and more tedious and more tasking to do versus a classic UI UX. But then you can flip it and say there's absolutely things that we'd be much better suited to do in conversation, especially if the conversation can be agnostic and take place in our interface, inside of a place like Claude, in a text, in an email, maybe even a voice conversation, because there's a place for all those modalities depending on what it is that we're doing and how we're trying to interact with our various software technologies and tools across the tech stack. So I think that it will be different for every task that we're trying to accomplish, and we need to engineer our UI UX that way now. Like, it's a whole new ball game when we approach this, and it's one of the things we're really excited about is we don't want to just apply the old way of UI UX thinking. We're going to apply a new way of thinking of every part of our software. And you also mentioned deterministic versus non-deterministic. That is also a huge level of decision we have to make. You can't replace the truly deterministic stuff, especially in the payroll HCM world, with a generative AI tool, right? We have to let rules engine based things for things that need to be 100% accurate, where compliance and legality are in place. That has to stay in the deterministic software lane, and let the generative AI play where the generative AI belongs. If I learned something at Krista, it's too many companies are failing. That 95% failure rate that MIT discussed, one of the biggest reasons is we're trying to apply generative AI to places it does not belong, at least today, and maybe never. It may not be the right place for a generative tool.
Interesting. And you talked about at the top, one of the things when you're getting behind the curtain of isolved that you thought was, hey, we should probably do a front end refresh. And I'm thinking about how this plays out over time, because a lot of the vendors in the space are talking about, we kind of need to get to the chat window, or more of this like hybrid model where it starts with chat, but maybe it brings in, a date picker or other different elements. But do you feel like we're heading to a world where there's just UI parity across the board, where like there isn't, like today you can go into one system and look vastly different than the other, but if they all kind of start at the chat window, does it end up all kind of feeling the same?
Yeah, I don't think that's where we end up. So often when we look at where do we think the future is, I hate to say it, but I embarrassingly can say we can look to sci-fi movies. And my favorite genre to think about where I think the world will go with AI is Star Trek: The Next Generation. And if you actually think about the way those crew members interacted with the ship, it was a combination of them talking to the ship for certain things, but they were hitting the keyboard and they were working with the user interface. The reality is, as I said, the conversation will always have its place, but it also will hit a wall where you actually become so much less efficient trying to do something in a conversation than you would with the interface. Now, the interfaces may become generative. If you listen to Jensen Huang in NVIDIA, every UI, UX could eventually be a generative display that gets created for us. We'll see, right? That's TBD. We couldn't see that part of the screen necessarily on Star Trek, but the reality is I think we're going to need both, and we'll need it for, the foreseeable future and beyond.
And when you enter the organization, I believe it was start of May, or maybe that was when the announcement was, but you come in with, again, kind of a white space in front of you and a lot of vision. How long does it take to take these ideas into practice to where clients are now experiencing some of these things?
Yeah, so, I was so excited to join the organization and be blessed with such an incredible team across the business, and particularly on the product side. Pragya, who runs our operation there, I shared with her kind of the playbook that I had been working on behind the scenes. She took that playbook, gave it to her team. They advanced it dramatically, to something that was even more interesting and exciting. And we literally started deploying facets of it almost right away. And we're already in market today with things that were fruits from that original discussion that she and I had. So as you can see, in the AI age, you can work incredibly fast and deploy incredibly quickly. We are no strangers to taking advantage of that, not only within our product, but behind the scenes with our teams working with AI agents to do our coding. So yeah, you'll see that our Claude connector is in marketplace and actively being used. Our first agents that will be deployed, that are the true next gen that we'll talk about, agents are going to be deployed next month. And our WCM strategy is something that you'll also see us rolling out here in the next couple of months. So I'd say within the first 6 months of my tenure, major facets of the strategy will already be in market being used by our customers.
You mentioned Claude, which earlier in the conversation you said, hey, like, we're not building frontier models, we're partnering with frontier models. Makes perfect sense. I've noticed there's a big, I guess a lot of businesses are torn about just how much they want to be in business with Claude, because obviously these frontier labs make you superhuman, but they're also looking at your work, your data, and trying to, in Claude's case, I think we saw Anthropic was posted a job for someone to lead their people products division. So, I think they're pretty much signaling that they're going to have some sort of HR workflow or tools. How do you think about just a relationship with a partner like that, where, again, the example of like Figma, where they sat on, I think chief product officer of Figma was on the board of Anthropic, and all of a sudden they had Claude design and it's meaningfully eaten into Figma's market cap. So just like, how do you think about sort of that frenemy dynamic?
Yeah, no, we thought a lot about it. So first of all, yeah, let's start with the basics. Yeah, I do not think that the right path is to try to build your own models when you've got these players who can spend so much and do so much in advance. But it's important to note, it's not just the model that is a big determinant in this. One of the biggest things that doesn't go appreciated is what they would call their connectors, which is really an AI iPaaS, right? And this is incredibly difficult technology to build and deploy. And it's the idea of translating conversation into an API that's bidirectional. And Claude and Anthropic are so far ahead in that game with what they've built. What that does is it instantly unlocks for us, our agents that we build, as well as our clients who leverage Claude to interact with us, instantly the ability to pool the agent across multiple data sets, and allows our agents to expand across multiple data sets. So when we talk about autonomous agents that can truly own outcomes, that needs to extend outside of our tech stack in order for that to be possible. Just like people aren't just doing work inside of isolved, they need to go into the CRM, they need to go into the finance system, they need to go elsewhere. The agents have to be able to. And that connector gives us the ability to do that capability right away. And that's not an asset you see in the HCM space much, if at all, today. So that's number one. Why we picked Anthropic? Number one is we are building this technology to be agnostic. So we can plug in other models downstream if we want to and decide to. And I think everybody realizes we're going to have some agnosticity here, right? The cost of these and what model's the best for certain things. Figuring all that out is part of the technology that will usher in. So we're engineering for that flexibility going forward. Next, I'd say Anthropic has made the most inroads in the SMB mid-market space, in the B2B space in general. They're clearly considered the safest play, and they don't train on their clients' data. So whether you're on the free or the paid version, they don't train on that unless you want them to, which I don't know why you would. So you select out of that, no problem whatsoever. So all that made them very conducive to an industry where we're dealing with sensitive data on behalf of our clients. So why are we not afraid of them? Well, one of the things that, we both know, Brett, but not everybody does, is that this particular industry isn't a pure software industry. We are a software and a services industry. We're highly deterministic, highly compliant. And because of the services component, we can only grow so fast. There's natural governors. We aren't a software business that can grow 500-600% a year. It's impossible to do that, which makes it kind of a distasteful business for a pure software player to be in. So they could play in the periphery and the fringes of it, but I don't expect that when that anybody in the AI space looks at the payroll human capital management space, that this is going to be an attractive place to go into, given the natural governors, the complexity, the compliance, all of that rigor that makes us very happy to be in the space, but turns off a lot of pure play software players. And so we're pretty comfortable that this isn't going to be a big threat in any way to us downstream.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think even the way they describe their people product, it's, a lightweight HR workflow, onboarding and performance reviews probably at the most, but, I don't think we're talking about anything touching people's pay, and I wouldn't expect that to change.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the benefits we have in particular being focused on SMB and mid-market is those clients do want a one-stop shop for all of that. Now, in the enterprise space, you start to get into a world where they're happy to piecemeal components of it and pull all that together. That might be an area that those vendors that are focused on that part need to think a little bit about, those tertiary products that a OpenAI or an Anthropic or somebody could potentially displace, but we don't see our client base being interested in pulling those things apart.
Yeah. Well, zooming a little bit away from the AI conversation, you talked earlier about some of the things that you saw in the isolved opportunity, sort of having this, maybe it's a Goldilocks zone of like big enough to kind of be nimble, but obviously small enough to be nimble, but big enough to have the resourcing required to compete in AI. What else, aside from that, and maybe the lack of an AI investment so far that allowed you to start from zero, what else, having competed against iSolve for decades, probably surprised you as you got to know the organization more?
Yeah. So I think I knew of iSolved, but I've come to say it's the best kept secret in HCM. Nobody had any idea, at least I didn't, that this was a 600 million plus business, with 200,000 customers and 9 million employees on the record and a 40-year rich history and SKUs that can honestly go toe to toe with anyone, including ADP. Like, such a rich ecosystem of things to help our clients in the SMB and mid marketplace with. I'd say the other things were just how unbelievably minded they are about service. Like, there's this entrepreneurial, startup-like mindset, founder-like mindset that just we give the service level that everybody wants. And that's more important now than ever in a world where, companies are kind of out of growth mode and not investing as much as they used to be able to invest because they're hunting EBITDA down. I would say the other thing was this unbelievable balance of how they get the business. So we of course have our organic engine, right? Which is how we go after the market directly. But what the founder and the accompanying team also built, a lot of people don't know that much about, is our network partner model. So we have over 250 partners that use our software to build payroll businesses across the United States. And those partners obviously generate some of our revenue, but we have a natural acquisition strategy. So a large percentage of that 600 million has come by acquiring these network partners. And what we uniquely do is avoid the pain that normally happens with that, because these clients come over on the same platform that they're already on. So there's no conversion, which is a huge pain point in a typical payroll acquisition. But we also bring all the employees over. And so they don't lose that service experience that comes with it, right? So it is as seamless. So our retention and our NPS on these are off the charts, but they're extremely accretive to our business as well. I also like to say it keeps our DNA fresh and founder-like. One of the things I've lived through many times is these companies that start off entrepreneurial small, they get really big and they lose that and they become kind of the corporate thing that loses what made it special. iSolved it already 600 million, over 3,000 employees, hasn't lost that a bit. And I believe it's because we constantly are reloading on these entrepreneurial people from these small to medium-sized payroll companies that we acquire on the regular every single year in a very predictable fashion. So those were the things that I just didn't know about iSolved that I've come to just love and appreciate more and more the more time I spend here.
Yeah, I mean, I was planning to go to the network partners next, so you anticipated it. And I think it's definitely unique, right? I think obviously so many vendors in the space, you can only buy ADP through ADP, Workday through Workday, XYZ. But I think even of the companies that are a little bit more open, I think iSolved, you guys call them network partners, other people call them resellers, right? And I think that's a big distinction. And I think it's sort of not, I don't know. When I see it played out in other HCMs, I see them view those resellers as people that are degrading their brand, people that are knockoffs rather than extensions of our team, people that, will fold into the organization in the future. So I think it's a very different mindset that you guys take.
You couldn't be more right. And, what we've come out of our strategy session since I'm joined, and it becomes even more synergistic as we move forward. iSolved organically, we plan on focusing our efforts selling direct to the market in the 50 plus space. And our network partners, naturally, by the nature of their businesses, founder-led, local, for the most part, they sell mostly small business, under 50 employees. And so we think this is the perfect way for us to get to the SMB space. Our network partners are selling in there like crazy. We acquire them, we get those 1 to 50, and then obviously from there, we can upsell them all these different products and services that we have in our catalog. And then we can focus on that 50 plus, and we're of a size and nature and scale that we're very attractive, right? Because once you get to 50, 100, 150 employees, you kind of want to work with somebody that's a big brand brand to stay established nationally. And that, of course, is what the isolved brand does. So we get our cake and eat it too. And I think focus on our unique domains. And so we lean into our network partners to support them and help them be as successful as they possibly can be for all those reasons, and let us focus on that 50 plus space.
So I'm hearing like you're selling the market three things, right? It's this depth and history and tried and true, we are established and we can then there's this AI forward approach of, we think that the approach we're going to take is the right one. And we've got all these different ways to kind of roll it out quickly. And then the third is we've got that human touch. We've got that service piece of it. On that third piece, I think every vendor wants to say they do service. And I'm sure, at previous stops in your career, you guys would tell customers, yeah, we do great service. Like, what is it how does it actually different here?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And you kind of nailed we've been talking about our three pillars, right? And so number one is we want to be the best in class service provider in our industry. Number two is we want to have the most powerful but easy to use technology. And that second part's important. A lot of companies have chased the enterprise space with their mid-market products, and they've alienated the mid-market by overcomplicating it. Like, we're laser focused on that mid-market experience, and we want it to be powerful but easy to use. And then third is our AI strategy, making it a true platform of action and intelligence with the next generation of fully autonomous agents that nobody's really delivering yet. Coming back to your question, though, you're right. Service is something we've always sold on in this industry. It's always one of the number one reasons people change. They come for the tech, they stay for the service. What we are going to be doing is we're going to be doubling down on that, not only through an investment in our people and our cultural mindset, but also through the use of artificial intelligence to make our people more capable, not to outsource the interaction with our customers, but to make our people more capable. I think one of the biggest misses that companies are finding is they're going straight to automation with AI. That's where the ROI is. And they're missing the opportunity to supercharge their people, especially their knowledge workers in places like sales, operations, customer support, implementation, where those new people have this huge learning curve, especially in our industry. And there are plenty of statistics that show you can take a first-year person and give them a 3 to 5 year productivity boost with a proper copilot engineered. And that's what we're laser focused on doing, because this moment in time, as companies are coming out of growth mode and decelerating and investing less, service is attriting. And we're seeing that through employees we talk to, clients we talk to, and the partners that refer those businesses, that there's a real need, and we plan on filling that need.
It's interesting. It reminds me of something that Jensen Wong said of people are asking about AI and unemployment. And he was like, which business would you rather invest in? The one that's cutting headcount or the one that's supercharging their headcount with intelligence that we've never seen before? It's like, yeah, I think it's a very zero-sum mindset to just look at it and say, how can we cut costs, and not what can we unlock with all these new capabilities?
And the companies that are in the minority that are getting AI right now, the studies show those companies are actually hiring more people, and they're not reducing headcount. They are unlocking potential. Everybody has all this tactical work that they can't get to. AI is great to eliminate that, but what it's also great at is giving people the ability to do more of what they love to do and do it sooner and faster than they otherwise could without AI. And that's how we're focused on AI, is really using it in that way. Certainly not focused on trying to reduce headcount as a result of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had more fun building than I have now that I have all these AI tools. So, well, thank you so much for the time today. It's been a wonderful conversation, and excited to see you guys continue to roll out this exciting roadmap. So really appreciate the time today, Michael.
Thank you, Brett. It was great to be here today.